Senator Alsobrooks.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. Secretary Duffy, good to see you again.
You as well, Senator.
And enjoyed the conversation yesterday. During our discussion, we talked about our time as county executives, and so you know that federal transportation programs really are so integral to the success of our states. Projects like road maintenance, bridge repairs, safety projects. And so I am looking forward to working with you and working with this committee to craft bipartisan surface transportation reauthorization bill. But I'm also wanting to ask you just about 3 questions. One is regarding construction costs for infrastructure that we know, particularly highway construction, have increased significantly. And the Federal Highway Administration's National Highway Construction Cost Index, which measures the rate of inflation in labor and material costs, increased, we know, 59% since 2021, 36% between 22 and in the first half of 23. And these costs continue to rise. And so we know that that this will impact how much infrastructure we can build with allocated funds. So the question is, how will the administration plan to ensure that transportation funding keeps pace with inflation so that projects in states like Maryland aren't delayed and are not downsized?
Yeah, Senator, I think that's a great question, and I appreciated our conversation yesterday, 2 former prosecutors, and I appreciate the good work you've done in all the roles you've had in your public service. But you're right. We have to do our work in the department to get these projects out the door, get grant agreements signed, and get new notice of funding opportunities done as well. So again, we can have a massive infrastructure build in this country. And the sooner we do it, I think, to your point, the more cost effective it'll be, because we get we get today's costs when we do projects, not tomorrow's costs if they're delayed. I think also an important part of it is not just the work that we have to do. I do believe that the Congress has to do its work on permitting reform, because that is taking a very long time and it's not the work that you've done or the department's done. It's that the process to go through to begin these projects takes so long, and if they're delayed 5, 6, 10 years, the cost of completion is significant. And also part of that, we can reduce the cost of the consultants and the permitting, which means more money will be there for the road or the bridge or whatever the rail that we're working on.
Okay, and also just, I know there's been a lot of conversation today about bridges. Maryland happens to also be very concerned about a bridge, in particular the Francis Scott Key Bridge that collapsed after being hit by a vessel in 2024. And the collapse highlighted some vulnerabilities that we have in our nation's bridge infrastructure, and particularly around bridges that were not designed to withstand these modern vessel strikes. And so in response to the tragedy in Maryland, the National Transportation Safety Board conducted an investigation and issued a preliminary report, which highlighted other high-risk bridges that are across the country. So the question is whether you will commit to expeditiously adopting the recommendations that the NTSB outlined in that preliminary report.
So I would note I've worked very closely with the NTSB, and their chair, Jennifer Hamady, has done an excellent job and has partnered with us very well. I want to take a look at the recommendations, and again, to implement recommendations on the number of bridges that she highlighted would indicate a significant amount of money that comes in this upcoming bill. Again, the resources have to be provided, and you all have to have the discussion if that's a priority for the Congress. But I'm happy to engage, and we should have a broader conversation together about what that priority list looks like. So again, the Francis Scott Key Bridge and the lives that were lost there, tragic, and we want to make sure that doesn't happen again.
Okay, and just the final question. I know we talked also about transit, and on average, the Washington Metropolitan Area Transit Authority, WMATA, carries over 800,000 passengers daily across rail and bus systems, very important to the D.C. area and metropolitan area, including Maryland. And so I want to ask you whether you will, the funding stream has been so important to us, and I know that the lack of predictable funding really does harm the safety of passengers. I know we talked a lot about safety on those transits. So as Secretary, will you work with Congress in supporting long-term predictable funding streams for transit systems like WMATA and MTA?
Yeah, I'm happy to have that conversation. I do think that, again, everyone driving in a car may be challenging if you're coming into into Washington D.C. or to New York City. And so transit's an important part of it. But we should expect that if we want people to ride our trains should be safe. They should not be subject to violence on our subways or our trains. And I think that's local communities. And I think the mayor has been making good efforts in D.C. here. But we have to take steps to make sure people are safe. And also, I think we have to look at the cost. In New York, I believe it's the next most expensive place to build subways is London, and New York is 5 times more expensive than London. So we got to get our costs under control as well, because we don't have a unlimited amount of money. We don't have a money printing machine, though some people might think that the Congress is a money printing machine. It's not. And so let's use the money well and make investments that go further for the taxpayer and the American people, and make sure that they're safe. And I would work with you on that and figure out how we make those goals a reality.
Right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Blunt Raj.